If you need a reason to pay attention to the upcoming municipal elections, look no further than your wallet. Why? Well, Kat Eschner is our Ontario Hub's affordability journalist, and she joins us now to explain. Hello there.
Hi, Jeyan.
All right, so you, in your latest article, talked about the municipal election in relation to affordability and the cost of living. First off, what made you write this story?
Well, two big things. One, as we all know, politicians say a lot of things during election campaigns, and I, as a voter, often find it difficult to parse, what they can actually do at the level of government they're running for. So I wanted to really dig into the issue, like the affordability issues that municipalities can really act on. And the other thing is that I knew from my reporting that municipalities actually have a really profound effect on the day-to-day affordability of everybody's lives. And I just wanted to sort of unpack that for voters so they could really think about what their priorities were, about the things that bugged them in their everyday life that they would like to see get better about their municipality, and really come to people's platforms with an educated eye to be like, is this someone I want to vote for?
All right, let's unpack some of that. I do want to mention, in your article, you said in some ways municipal elections are more important than any other election just because of how it impacts our day-to-day. Let's talk about food. That's something when we talk about cost of living and affordability is top of mind. How does municipal elections and politics affect food?
For sure. Well, I mean, food is one of those things where you might think more about, big grocery chains or larger levels of government or things like that. But if you consider it, the way you access food most probably is in your local area. So you go to grocery stores, you visit restaurants, maybe you farm a little bit in your yard. And municipalities have a huge impact on all those kinds of things because they say where grocery stores can go, which grocery stores are allowed to go there. They locate food banks, they locate restaurants, and then also they, through bylaws, can really impact whether or not you're allowed to cultivate food in certain areas on your own property if you do have outdoor space.
All right, let's continue with zoning policies because that's where we're going.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not just food, but also something like housing as well.
So zoning is such a it's such a nerdy thing, but it's so important. Like, I cannot underline how important the zoning powers of municipalities are. And of course, when people think of zoning, the biggest thing they think of is housing, because of course municipalities get a lot of power to dictate what housing gets built and where. Although of course every level of government has some influence here. But it's not just housing. And it's not just housing in the way you might expect. So when we're talking about housing, you have to consider not only the fact that more housing is being built, but what kind of housing it is. So for example, if you've lived in the same neighborhood for a decade and you want to stay in that neighborhood because you have lots of connections there, but say you've just had a child or gotten married and you wish to, or moved in with someone and you want to grow your home, but you're like, there's no housing supply around here that will allow me to do that. So I can live here as a single person in my bachelor or one-bedroom unit, but I would like, a 2 or 3 bedroom unit now. I'm looking to, have somewhere with a good school, all of that stuff. Municipalities have a huge effect there. The other thing is, like, municipalities, through zoning, they dictate where everything goes. They dictate where parks go, they dictate where community centers go, they dictate where entertainment, like concert venues, go. So if those things are things you care about, like if you care about your local park, if you care about, your local community center, if you care about the kinds of entertainment you have nearby, those are all things that municipalities dictate as well.
This seems like the obvious follow-up when we're talking about destinations, entertainment, food, housing. One thing that we need to talk about is transit and roads. How are people affected by the decisions made in council when we talk about those?
So this is the other thing where it's like you don't understand. You think you understand, but you don't understand how much impact municipalities have over this. Municipalities, they are in charge of the local roads. They're not in charge of the highways in general. That is not a municipal thing, but they are in charge of the local roads. So there is maintenance and repair. So potholes, if you drive through a pothole on your way to work every day and you really wish that pothole was fixed, that's a municipal issue. But similarly, if you want to go and take the bus to work and there's no bus stop near you, or the bus stop near you doesn't have a shelter or doesn't have an adequate shelter, that's a municipal issue. And then also if you want to do something like walk or bike to work, and it's not safe to do so because the streets are not signed in a way that would make it safe to do so, or because there aren't protected bike lanes, those are municipal issues. So the municipality really controls a lot about how people get around, and that has a huge impact on affordability because one of the things it dictates is whether or not you need to own a car, which is a huge expense. One source I spoke to for this story was talking about how for some people, this is their second biggest expense, owning a car or two cars. But then also, say you want to go out for dinner. And because of where you live, you have to then take an Uber or a Lyft home, and it's a very expensive ride because those two things are so far apart and your area isn't served by transit. It's another sort of unforeseen way that municipalities really affect the affordability of your day-to-day life.
So one thing municipalities have to contend with, unlike provincial or federal governments, is they're legally required to balance their budgets. So with that, how do they pay for policies and programs that we're talking about here, and how do they go and create those?
So this is one of the big things that people I talked about, is the fact that municipalities, they have to pay for a lot of services for local people. Those people are the same people who fund those services. So municipalities, the main source of their revenue is property taxes, which both homeowners and renters pay. There's a common misconception that renters don't pay property taxes. We do. And keeping property taxes low is kind of a political, like people want to do that, people like that politically, but it's also, you need the revenue from property taxes to, give services, garbage, any kind of municipal issue, that's a property tax. That's funded through property taxes or through a few other measures like user fees. So transit is the sort of biggest user fee one. So like, I pay my $3.20 with a Presto card to get on the subway every day. That's me funding the transit system. And then the other thing is just through different kinds of deals with other levels of government. So sometimes municipalities can get funding through provincial or federal programs. So they're trying to do all this with actually a fairly small, level of revenue compared to the kind of services they are expected to provide. So it's a bit of a balancing act.
Bit of a balancing act there. All right, so Ontarians are going to the polls October 24th. Given that everything that we've talked about here, what makes an ideal candidate for a mayor or a council member?
This is something that I talked about with my sources, but I also was sort of thinking about it myself as a voter. I was like, okay, so who could act on this? And I would say there are two big things. One is if you have specific issues that you care about, say it's even like bike lanes in your area or, road maintenance in your area or the garbage cans if you have a specific issue that's bugging you in your everyday life, unlike voting for federal government or voting for provincial government, the municipality is the level of government where you can really choose someone who cares about that issue and seems like they will act well for you. But the other thing is that municipalities, because of some of the funding things we've talked about and because of the way that, they're actually a fairly small level of government, one of my sources, Leslie Wu, who is formerly of Metrolinx and now works at Civic Action, now leads Civic Action, told me, she said, people who can work collaboratively with other levels of government, other municipalities, with local businesses, people who know how to collaborate and who are going into politics with a collaborative spirit can be really powerful actors at the municipal level in a way that I think is really important. So when we're talking about what makes a good mayor, what makes a good councillor, someone who can collaborate is top of the list, I think.
Kat, really great stuff. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.